Julie with Annie's Heirloom Seeds, and welcome to At Home at Annie's. It's that time of year again. Time to start getting ready for spring. The first thing I do is start my tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant. It can be a little tricky, but not too tricky if you have the right equipment. So I'm going to show you how I do it for a pretty foolproof way of getting your tomatoes and peppers started. Now first you're going to want to start with your peppers and your eggplant. They take a little longer than tomatoes. Tomatoes will germinate in 3 to 5 days if you have them on a heat mat. Tomatoes and peppers and eggplant are going to take a little longer. I've had them in about 10 days and they're just starting to pop up. The key to starting your tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants is heat. They don't germinate at temperatures below about 75 degrees very well. If you're in the 60s, it can take your peppers a month to germinate, and in that time they might rot and not come up at all, and it's really discouraging. However, if you keep them warm in the 80-degree range, then they're going to come up pretty quickly. Peppers 10 to 12 days, tomatoes even 3 to 5 days, instead of the 2 weeks that it normally takes when you don't have heat. So the key is to get a heat mat. We sell a couple heat mats, from a little teeny windowsill heat mat to one that holds one of these Jiffy Easy Grow trays, to one that holds 2 trays or even 4 trays, which is what I use because I start a lot of plants. The size depends on how many plants you want. Now, you can also get to choose the size pot that you're going to use. I like to use these larger 2.5-inch pots. You can use the little 6-cell trays. Your plants are going to potentially get root bound a lot sooner. If you don't plan on keeping the plants indoors for very long and you plan on planting them when they're kind of small, then the smaller trays are going to work. However, if you aren't sure that you're going to be able to get your plants out, you're either going to need to transplant from the little trays into larger pots or just start in a slightly larger pot that the plant won't get root bound in. Why do we care about it being root bound? Well, that means the roots are kind of growing into the edge of the pot, and they get to the edge of the pot and then they don't have anywhere to go and they kind of travel right back down and in. And it can kind of stunt the growth of your plant. The goal is to have them start growing and then just keep growing, and then they grow really well. Once they get root bound, they kind of get slowed down and they don't necessarily reach their full potential. The first thing I do when I'm starting my plants is I get the pots ready. I have some labels that I put on, stickers, that tell me what's going to be in each pot. You can use little sticks to put them in your pots so that you know what you're planting. If you don't have, these are special laser labels that are waterproof. They're going to be getting wet. So you're going to have to watch out for whatever label you use that it doesn't run when it gets wet. I sometimes used to use paper that I printed out on, and I used packing tape. And that clear packing tape was pretty waterproof and I didn't have any problems. The first step is to fill the pots. I always use our coconut coir seed starting mix. It's coconut coir, perlite, vermiculite, and some worm castings for fertilizer. Now, this works really well. The coconut coir absorbs water well. I used to use peat moss because that was all that was available, and I was very frustrated by it because peat, once it dries out, it repels water, and it was really hard to get it wet again, and that meant that my plants were dying of lack of water even though I was trying to water. So now with the coconut coir, it just wicks that water up and I don't have any problems. So you're going to fill your pots up. Now it's time to plant the seeds. Tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant are all pretty small seeds. And the rule of thumb is to plant them only as deep as they are big, and they're kind of flat, so you don't really need a lot of dirt on top of them. And tomatoes require light to germinate, so you really don't want to bury them deep. What I do is I put usually 2 seeds in each pot. That way I'm sure to get a plant in every pot. You could choose to plant 1 seed in every pot. Normally our germination rates are about 80 to 90%, so you're going to have a couple pots that don't have plants in them if you plant only 1 seed. So I plant 2 seeds, and first I just put them on the surface. After I put them on the surface, then I just tap them down where the seed is and lightly cover it. Just tap the seed down and very lightly cover it. Now, I don't go very deep, and then sometimes I just rustle the surface to make sure that the seeds are in a little bit. After your pots are all planted, it's time to put them in the tray. The tray is a tray without holes in it that we're going to fill with water. I usually put it on the heat mat first so I'm not carrying a sloshy thing. Fill it with water, put on the humidity dome. Now you'll notice that the humidity dome doesn't fit really well. That's okay, it's good enough. It keeps some of the moisture in, and that's all we need. And then we leave it on the heat mat, and in a week or 2 we're going to have little seedlings come up. Here you can see some of the little seedlings I planted 2 weeks ago. They're just starting to show their heads. These are our peppers and eggplant. So what are the keys to starting our tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant? First, we need to use a heat mat. They need 80 degrees, and the heat mat gets you about 10 to 15 degrees warmer than your room temperatures, which is perfect in most homes. You're going to want to place your seedlings in a sunny windowsill. That way they get enough light. If you don't have enough light, you're going to need some pretty powerful grow lights to get them what they need. And then we're going to want to get them water. The first step to that is using the coconut coir seed starting mix. That way, the coconut coir absorbs the water and keeps your roots nice and wet. And I also liked bottom water. Fill your tray with water, and about a ½ inch to an inch of water. I use a fertilizer every other week or every week to make sure they have their nutrients, and then you want to keep them wet. And that water will wick up into the soil and keep the seedlings with just the right amount of water. And then we just need to be patient and wait and watch our seedlings grow. Thank you for joining us for this week's At Home at Annie's.